Hello there, my friends. Welcome. I am the British Narrator. Wonderful to have you here. If this is your first time here, please consider dropping a like or a subscribe or just whatever you want, really. But anyway, this is a change from my usual videos. Today I'm going to try and tell a story from my life. This did happen quite a few years ago, and I do not sort of support any of the things happening in here, just in case you think that I'm in on this. This is a government conspiracy idea, by the way. Who knows where it'll end up. I lived in a small city. It's had ideas, delusions of grandeur of being its own massive city. But no, it's just a big town. I would give the name away, but that might be revealing a bit too much. And in this town, next to a train station, there was a small shop. Just a small, average shop, run by one man called Dave McGovern. Obviously, it's not as far as this, I'm just a terrible drawer. Now, Dave was a very strange person, well known throughout the entire town as being a massive eccentric. Also, he had a lovely beard. And his entire shop was full of anything you could imagine. There's a counter here, so you could look in and you could see all this. This counter would be covered in things. The entire walls from all of his place, and it went back quite a way too, they'd be full of things. He used to be I don't know what role he had in films. I believe he just bought things from their set, but he had thousands upon thousands of different outfits. Uniforms from wars, not wars, reenactments, weapons, all that stuff. He had a pot here that was full of spears. Anyway, Dave was well known around the town. Everybody loved to stop and talk to him. But again, he was absolutely insane. He thought the government was after him. Big men in suits, with little ties and angry beady eyes. He thought the government was out to get him, because in his shop here, there was two rooms. Now his room normally ended back here. There was a small door here, hidden by a bunch of different coats, that led to a little back room, which was just like about that big. Just a kind of small extra room. It's already a mess. But over here, there was a small ladder downstairs. Now, if you took the ladder downstairs, you'd end up in his basement room, obviously. And this room had some of his weirder things. He had a full suit of armour standing in the middle, surrounded by racks upon racks of clothing. And, over in the corner here, there was an even weirder thing, a small hidden door. Now, Dave, well known for being an eccentric, behind this door he kept his weapons, you see. Weapons he'd recovered from reenactments and such like. So this led out into a small corridor with some stairs on the sides that went up. Never went up those, so I don't know where those go, and it led away into a long, long corridor. Now you see, Dave was convinced that his shop here was attached by this long, long corridor to the government building, which was located over here. So that's why he was convinced the government was after him, because they wanted his stuff, and he had an access route to their place. As I said before, Dave was a bit of a weirdo, but on any day you walked by his shop, there would be tens of people standing there, talking to him, including me. I'd always stop by. He'd be sitting on his little seat out here on the steps, talking the ears off anyone who went by. He was an adorable chap. Sadly, he died a few years ago, which was a big old blow. The entire town laid flowers around his place. But we're going to tell two stories about him today. Dave McGovern is actually on Google if you look him up. He's a few other people have written morose statements about him, but I like to remember him who he was. A nutter. So, once upon one of these times, he took me into his shop, down into his little weapons storage place, and he gave me a claymore. Now, for those unfamiliar with UK parlance, a claymore is essentially a gigantic sword. Like the Scots used. One of those, imagine one of these, but quite a bit bigger. Like this, for example. So, obviously, walking around town with something like this, it was legitimately about that big. trying to walk around town with something like this wasn't going to fly. So, we had the genius idea of covering it with newspaper. Genius, I know. So that as soon as I got outside, no one would be able to tell what it was. It was absolutely flawless. Right up to the point I got to a main road. You can go by now. And I got to a little zebra crossing. So waiting for some traffic, some lovely cars. My drawing is fantastic, by the way, it must be said. You can obviously tell that's a car. So I was waiting here. There's me with my wonderful muscles. Oh yes, I'm quite the Chad. That's me, and there was this old lady next to me. One of those hunched old ones carrying a kind of those weird carry bags they have. I'm sure that's what it looked like. So here I am with this bloody massive great claymore. I step here, wait for a car to come past. This little old lady is next to me, and I lift the claymore off my shoulder. It's covered in newspaper, but it's very obvious. It's about, seriously, that well hidden. And it slams into the floor with so much force, I crack the paving slab and send chips of dirt and stone flying everywhere. And she gave me the weirdest look I have ever received. I have no idea what she was thinking, but I don't know. She was a strange one anyway. She had this weird frizzy hair and a big old hat. Now she looks like a character from Futurama. Anyway, that's one of the stories. I eventually managed to get that sword all the way home, and then I used it for about a week, and then it broke. It was shaped roughly like that, although a much slimmer, so it was actually, usable. But then it broke and it kind of snapped off around here. I've stuck the handle line somewhere around my house, and I've stuck some old pictures. I might try and include those, but if I can't... I'm not good at editing, you know that already. Or if you're new to the channel, I'm bad at editing. Now the second story about poor old Dave. If we return to this little tableau here, all of which is grabbable, I better not press yes. The government, and sadly, Dave died. I believe it was old age. Every few weeks he'd kind of skip out of town and go somewhere else, completely different. Wonderful beard. No one knows why. But every few weeks he'd run away. I think he said once that the government was after him or something. So, listen to Dave, kids. Government bad. He's used 3 underlines and an exclamation point saying how serious he is. Although he looks like a giant skeleton. Anyway, so eventually, sadly, he died. There was hundreds of flowers laid out in front of his place. These are lines, but you can assume they're flowers laid in front of his shop. Now, I think he may have been onto something, because barely a week later, the entire place was closed down. Everything of his was shipped out. All of this stuff, 50 years of collected items, was auctioned off within the week. And barely a few days after that, about, from 1 to 6 days, the place was gone. It was returned into a solicitor's, which is some delicious irony for him. And all of this was gone. All of those were gone. The basement door had been concreted over. This side door back here was gone. And the entire place was unrecognisable. So he may have been onto something. The government would not normally be that fast in order to kind of deter someone they didn't like. The moral of the story is, Dave McGovern was a wonderful chap. He'd entertain the entire town with stories. He could talk the hind legs off me. I don't have any legs. I do. Just in Rec Room, nothing down there. But he was a lovely chap, and he was the talk of the town. If you ever want to learn more about him, his name was Dave McGovern. Dave McGovern. Dave McGovern, he was one of the nicest people I have ever met. And his stuff was auctioned off. I don't know the exact price, but there are articles talking about what a wonderful chap he was. Oh, I miss him. I'd stop by there every time I was in town. I'd come into town for no apparent reason, maybe to get some shopping. And I'd always pop by and see Dave, even if I didn't want to buy anything. And sometimes he'd just up and give me stuff. Like the claymore, he gave me a spear once. That also didn't last too long. A spear. He gave me an old shirt, which I've still got to this day. It's in my cupboard somewhere. It's very strange. But he gave me so much, and he would always have a new story to tell about something or other. He was one of those people who never runs out of energy, you know? He never gets tired, he never stops, he never ceases, just stays in there and works hard. And he wasn't even doing it for the money. In his shop, he'd just say a price, more than likely half of what you'd expect to pay for it. And he'd just kind of give it away. He didn't want the money, really. He would only really just put it in his pocket and say, okay, thanks. No till, no security, no nothing. I mean, who would want to steal from him? He was a lovely chap. But the government didn't like him, so... Dave McGovern. One of the friendliest, happiest people I have ever known. He ran his own shop, he lived his own life, and he did whatever he wanted to do whenever he wanted to do. I just wish he was still around, really. His shop was named Strawberry Fields, and it was located just next to the railway station and slightly down the road from the government building, which is, again, the reason why he thought this little tunnel may have been onto something. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this new type of video. My name's The British Narrator. I hope to see you again soon. If you'd like the video, please like, comment and subscribe. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Thank you very much. Goodbye, my friends. Narrator out.